So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce author Michelle Theall.
Hi, everybody. So it's true, I'm a writer. It's kind of how I started out my career. I've been in publishing for probably 23 years, mostly in magazine publishing. But I've also been a photographer, and I'm here really mostly to talk about that. I kind of turned pro a few years back and got represented by an agency, stock agency, and I can tell you all a little bit about how that happened. But first of all, I wanted to ask, please raise your hands if you have not been to Alaska. Now I'm so sorry, because now you're going to want to go. If you didn't want to go, now you're going to want to go this year. I started off in photography back in college, dark rooms, all the formaldehyde stuff on your clothes that, you're permanently stained, your hands permanently smell. But I always loved photography and always played around with photography. And I turned to digital in 2004. I went to Africa, and I was just telling a friend of mine that I saw here on one of my trips that I was on, and they were, hey, you made it in. That I took 3 cameras on that trip. I took a point shoot, I took slide film, I took my 35 millimeter camera with film, and then I took my the brand new digital camera. And I was very skeptical about giving up film. But I shot on all 3 the entire trip in Africa, and then when I got home, I compared all the results, and I switched over to digital and never looked back. But all those things I learned in the darkroom were certainly helpful for editing in the digital world, because a lot of the terminology and the things that they use are very much the same. I think in the beginning I was just happy to get the shot, especially in Alaska, especially where wildlife is concerned. And it was the closer the better. I said my tombstone will probably say she finally got too close. And the last frame of whatever I shot will be the bear, coming at me. And you know what? I smile when I say that, because I'm sure I would have some look of joy on my face for it. But I learned a lot more about photography than just the closer the better. I think when I start off on trips, usually I do get that sort of okay, I shot a photo of the bear. Now let's get a good photo of the bear. But just that first of, hey, prove I was here, prove this particular bear was here, I exist, it exists, kind of a photo. And I had a few shots that were in magazines, and mostly because I had connections with those people as a writer and editor, so I still didn't feel very legit. Later in magazines, I became a creative director and a photo editor. So I was helping to pick out the images from all these award-winning photographers and scanning through them day after day after day for Women's Adventure magazine, Alaska magazine, and then later I worked with the folks over at Backpacker and Climbing and those magazines. But just because I know what a mind-blowing image is doesn't mean that I really knew how to take one. And I still, to this day, know everything that's wrong with every single shot I've taken. And I want to redo on it, which is maybe why I keep going back to Alaska again and again and again. And so what I like to say is opportunity doesn't equal mastery. Right place, right time, right light, right lens, right setting, right composition, in the frame, right gear, and then that one divine moment that you can't really account for, can't really explain. But also you can have all those technical skills and never have the opportunity. And that's the other thing is whether it's in your memory or it's in the camera, to go to these places. And tonight we're going to talk mostly about Alaska, but to go to these places, don't wait. Don't wait. So, I'm not that old. I turned 50 this year. And but I was diagnosed in 2003 with MS. And at the time, I didn't know how quickly my course with the disease would go, and I was having trouble walking, and I thought, I've got all these places I want to go to and all these things that I want to do, and I didn't see myself doing them in a wheelchair. I wanted to do them on my own 2 feet. So I sort of pushed things up and really went almost rapidly at it until I realized that, hey, you know what, this is a marathon, not a sprint, and however I do this, I will still do it, and we'll figure out a way. But it did push quite a few things up for me, including Alaska. But the cool thing about Alaska is that Alaska does not require a ton of mobility. It is not like, certainly you can backpack if you want to in the very remote bush areas and that kind of thing, but most of the things I'm going to show you on here, in fact, my problem was sitting too much and not getting to move around. I had to actually make an effort to be able to move around, other than carrying the 60 pounds of equipment, which I don't recommend that you do. And that was the turning pro movement sort of moment. What the heck have I done? So I finally decided, you know what, this is what I love doing, and yeah, I'm going to keep writing. And I was the editor-in-chief at Alaska Magazine, but then I was also had started shooting for them. And as I shot more and more, I thought it's time for me to upgrade my equipment. And so I went and I bought $14,000 worth of camera gear in a moment of who knows what, insanity. And we had researched it, got everything I needed, and even booked a trip so that I couldn't get back out of it. The trip was leaving in a few days. Went home to practice with the camera, promptly flipped the wrong switch on the tripod and dropped it on the ground. Sickening thud. I go to start shooting with it, and all I'm getting are blank frames. So I had to go back to the camera shop the next day, explain what I had done, this, that, and the other. Anyway, I left with another camera, but it was just sort of this is how this is going to be. Could barely carry the pack. I kept getting my hair caught in the tripod. I had a baseball cap on to block the sun, and then every time I went to take a vertical shot, the cap would fly off, and I just looked like one of the Three Stooges out there, trying to shoot. But at the same time, I fell in love with Alaska the very first time that I went to it, which was probably about 10 years ago. And that was in that moment of me saying, basically, when I turned 40, I said, for my 40th birthday, I want to go to Alaska. And I don't just want to go to Alaska, I want to get that shot. I want to get that shot that I've seen. Michelson is famous for it, I think. You've seen it in his galleries, of those bears on top of the waterfall, their mouths wide open, and salmon are just leaping into their mouths. I'm going there. That's where I'm going for my 40th birthday. I'm going to save up my money, and that's where I'm going to go. And so I researched it, and there are two places where you can get that shot. One's called the McNeil River Valley, and the other is Brooks Falls. And Brooks Falls just lets anybody in, and McNeil River Valley has the lottery system. And you're lucky if you get in, and you don't know if you're going to get in. And I said, okay, so Brooks Falls it is. Let's go. Brooks Falls is in Katmai National Park. There's Brooks Camp, the sign. You arrive on a float plane. And what you have to understand about Alaska is that half the fun is getting there. If you're looking at the bus you're on, or the train you're on, or the plane or the boat as, gee, when we get to such and such, I'm going to get off and do such and such. That's not Alaska. Alaska is everything that happens on the way. It is transportation. So flight seeing is part of the cost of your trip. So if it costs you $700, which is about what it's up to now, it was $500 when I did it, to take a float plane from Anchorage, you actually take 2, maybe 3, to go to Katmai. And then you spend the day in Katmai, 8 hours on the ground. You get lunch. It is the most fantastic immersion into Alaska. If that was all you ever got of Alaska, you'd still be pinching yourself. And so to me, it's the best, $500, or you think about how many thousands of dollars you spend on a cruise. You ride around on the water for hours and hours and hours, and you take an excursion, and maybe you see something. You're seeing stuff the whole way, flight scene, caribou running down below, gorgeous volcanoes. So it's just well worth the price of admission. That's like one of the things you would see. That's Mount Katmai. That's a volcanic crater. I can't remember what year that went off, but I just love that little milky blue lake in the middle of that crater. And this was 10 years ago, so this was my bear, and I pretty much had to shake myself and pinch myself. I was so happy. So Katmai, Brooks Falls, pretty much you arrive. There's no ranger with you with a gun. They take your pack. They say, please dump all your beef jerky. Don't take any food with you. Please, please, please. Lock up all your stuff, take your camera, but no food. And you walk a trail. Now, the trail is not enclosed. The trail does not have a fence. You do not have bear spray. You do not have a ranger with you. You walk these, oops, I don't know what I just knocked over. You walk these trails that are kind of single track trails in between viewing platforms. And then you get to these viewing platforms, and there's these very elaborately enclosed platforms with double gates, and they're off the ground, and you feel fairly secure on them. But when you're walking around before the platforms, it's a free-for-all. I mean, at this point, there were 30 coastal brown bears, that's a grizzly bear, that we saw that day within our 8 hours. Moms with cubs, big sows, big males, big, we saw it all. And at one point, we were walking down the single-track trail. My partner that was with me said, I think lunch would be a good idea, because dragging me away from this is impossible. It's impossible. And then she said, there's another viewing platform over by where they're serving lunch, and there might be some different bears over there. So we left the viewing platform, and as we're on this trail and we're walking, she's in front of me, I'm behind her, and there's a curve in the trail on trees. And she says, bear. And sure enough, around this corner, loping right at us, is this big grizzly. And we just had enough time for me to say, now would be a good time to get off the trail. And I took her jacket and just had moved her slightly off the path of the trail, and we turned our backs to the bear, so we wouldn't be looking him in the eye. And I just remember the slap of his paws running by. And it was the coolest sound. But he ran by. He was just going from point A to point B. He wasn't charging us. He was, we were just in his way. So he goes by, and I wait a little bit, and then I turn around to make sure he's gone and we can get back on the trail. And when I turn around, he's gone down the trail. He's about where the back of the room is. And he turns around and looks at me, stops in the trail and turns around on the path and looks at me. And that was the point where I said, oh, stop thinking. What are you thinking about, bear? Nothing to see here. So, and then he went on his way. And that's one of the points that I would like to make about Alaska and these bear viewing areas and what makes them so special. Katmai and Lake Clark and national parks in particular. These bears have been raised, when I say raised, they have lived there without being hunted, and they have lived there without associating humans with food, with the ability to get food from humans. So they don't consider people a threat. Granted, they're still wild animals. If you do something stupid, they can hurt you. But in general, you're like a log. You're like a tree. You're part of their world, but not anything they consider to be scary or a threat to them. In the history of Katmai National Park, the entire history of Katmai National Park, with 2,000 brown bears roaming the place, there have only been 2 deaths. And that was the grizzly man and his girlfriend, the movie that you saw, The Grizzly Man. So that man lived there for 13 summers, naming them, petting them practically, and it still took him 13 years to get killed. So, you know, your odds are pretty good of not having anything happen to you. It's just a little shot of sort of some of the paths from that year. This is why they come to Katmai, the salmon run. And this was this year, actually, that I shot this one of the fish jumping up the falls. It's pretty amazing. I can't understand how they are able to leap up there and how many times they try to. This guy's not very good at fishing. He had a few of them leap over his head. Staring right at that one and missed it. Some of them stand on top of the waterfall and wait for them to jump in their mouth. Some of them stand on the top of the waterfall and wait to just put a paw over them the second those poor suckers finally get up the thing. Some of them stand below knowing that most of them will fail jumping, and they're going to fall right back down into the pool below the falls, and that's what this guy was doing. I think this guy's name is Backpack. You know, the rangers there, they're not supposed to name the bears, but they kind of do, and they'll tell you. And there's Backpack diving after a fish. And I like to get the swirl, you know, as a photographer, if you can get the nose and eyes sharp, and then with your focal length of your lens, get some of the rest of it kind of blurred. It's kind of a fun thing to do. This little guy was a young male, and he was kind of hiding in the bushes. That guy is called 747. He was a big bear. My favorite part of Katmai, though, is Hallow Bay. And if you saw the movie The Bears, I think, that came out from Disney, that followed a mom and her cubs and kind of made a little show out of it, that was Hallow Bay. It's just another part of Katmai. And I love Hallow Bay because it is very remote. You stay in these tent camps, and the tent camps, as you can see, it has an electric wire tape, like a horse tape, or fenced around the tents. But you poop in the woods, you pay $2,000, and you go poop in the woods. Not your thing, I totally understand, but for me, I was like, I'll poop in the woods. Show me a grizzly, I'll poop in the woods. So you stay in these camps, they cook for you, you have a guide. Again, your guide has nothing, no arms, with the exception of these guides carried flares. And all the flares would do if the guy, and he said I've had to send one off once. I said, does the flare like go up in the air to call for help? He said, no, it sizzles, and that scares the bear away. And he only had to use it once. He said it was during mating season, and there was a male that was being incredibly aggressive and didn't like that he was in the area. And he shot, lit the flare, and the bear backed off. So, this is the view from the camp. Spectacularly beautiful, and I should mention there are bald eagles everywhere as well. Some of the grizzly prints, and they're everywhere on the beach. So this was a story that was interesting. I was fortunate enough, this mama bear and her cubs, she was nursing her cubs across the way with a fireweed behind her. It was really beautiful. I kept wondering, is she going to get any closer? Is she going to get any closer? She was really far away. And she did get up after nursing them, and she kind of walked around, and the little three cubs trailing after her. What I love about this particular shot is that it just feels like they're at the end of the earth. It's like you've taken a shot from space or something, and sort of has that world view. She kept walking around. There was a male bear that was also on the beach. Now, I did not like. That's maybe the only bear that I've been a little bit frightened of. He was acting odd. It wasn't a warm day. He was panting. Anyway, he was acting a little weird. But Mama Bear kind of wanted to get away from them. That's a big threat to her and to her cubs. But what they have learned in Katmai and what they have learned in Lake Clark is that a group of photographers, or people in general, are great babysitters. we're safe. That male bear is not going to come over to a group of photographers. It's just not. So Mama Bear went down to fish. There she is. All that water streaming off of her face. She looks very ferocious. She went down to fish, and she led her cubs across the shore to where myself and my guide, the others had gone in because it was raining. Because it was raining, that's another thing. Photographers, the best shots happen in the worst weather. They just do cloud cover and all that stuff. It just makes for some really cool shots. So it started raining, they went in, it was just me and a guide. And we were kneeling out there. I was only at this place for maybe 48 hours, and I knew it because I couldn't get weathered in because I had another place I had to be, another flight I had to catch. So I had said the next flight that comes I'll take because I can't afford to get weathered in. It was going to mess up my whole schedule. And so Mama Bear led her 3 cubs across to where we were, went down to fish, and left them with us on our side of the shore. The 3 of them came and toddled over. I'm shooting with a 200 to 400 lens, I think, and can't change it because basically my guide has said, I said, what should I do? And she said, just stay still. Keep shooting, but stay still. So I'm like, I can't get in my bag. I can't, whatever. They were too close to try and get in the frame. Like this bear, there's no way I could have gotten him, entirely in the frame. So they're coming over, one of them gets on his legs, and every time one of them kind of comes over, my guide goes, like that. And I asked her later, I said, she said, well, you didn't want to clap. She said, I want to discourage the bear from coming, any closer to humans. But you don't want to scare it, because if you scare it, that could provoke from the mom a mother response, and she might think her cubs are in trouble, and then she would attack you. So it was just and they would kind of back up, look a little miffed, and then back up. And then they slept. I sat for probably 30 to 45 minutes shooting these cubs. They were probably as far away from me as this woman here in blue. Maybe not even that far. And I'm kneeling down and I'm taking these pictures of these cubs sleeping in the rain while Mama fishes. This is the big male that was down the beach, and he did cause me a little bit of a scare. There was a lip that we were up on, and then there was a drop off down below, and he decided to fish the river, and we couldn't see him, and so he just came running into the river and disappeared. And I thought, if he comes up the other edge, and he'd been being so weird, I thought, how could we even respond? We can't see him anymore. We don't even know what he's doing. And sure enough, my guide had pulled up alongside me, and I did see that he had his flare out. Was standing next to me while I was shooting, but nothing happened. This Hallow Bay also has wolves. It's not an uncommon sight. So we're sitting on the beach, we're waiting for something to happen. I've got maybe 2 hours before my plane gets there, and I'm done. And so we're kind of falling asleep on the beach. We've eaten. There aren't any bears right at the time. And our guide all of a sudden goes, I'm like, why is he whistling? If there was a bear, normally they're not scared of us. They don't scare off. You just say, bear, guys, wake up. But he kind of made a whistling sound, and he said, grab your gear, get over here. And I'm like, what's wrong? Am I supposed to panic? And he basically said, we have to get planted. Put your stuff here, and we stay. Down the beach, 100 yards, there's a wolf coming up the beach. And he said, we stay, it decides. It decides if it's curious, if it wants to come to us, or if it's going to go by. But we don't move. We just stay. If we start to move, it will run off. So we just stay. We let it decide. And he dipped down below where the beach was, and I thought, he's just going to go out of sight and pop up on the other side of the beach. And instead, he came straight up toward us, just curious as anything. He got within about 10 yards, and then kind of looked at us and walked back down the beach. So Hallow Bay is probably one of my favorite places. Lake Clark National Park is another one of my favorites. And incidentally, there are 8 national parks. We call these our crown jewels, right, in the U.S. 8 national parks in Alaska. If you took them and added them all together and doubled, if you took all the national parks in the lower 48, added them together and doubled it, doubled the square acreage, you still wouldn't have what these 8 national parks have, even if you doubled it, added them all together, add Big Bend, Grand Canyon, add all this together, these 8 national parks in Alaska, it's over 2.5 times. So when you fly over the Cook Inlet to Lake Clark National Park, again, flight seeing is part of the deal. Those are beached, hauled out seals. There's a blue duck blind kind of down there. The landscape is just really very stunning, very photogenic. That's like something out of Ansel Adams, you know, it looks a little like Yosemite. But that's Silver Salmon Creek on the Lake Clark National Park side. This is the beach, you know, where you stay, and the boats and the sun. And as I said, you know, I think a lot of people wake up and they go, oh, it's cloudy, I wanted a blue sky in my photos. I think the clouds make things way, way more interesting. This is sort of what it's like to be out there shooting, and that's a group of photographers there that are shooting. There's a cub that's clamming, actually 2 cubs that are clamming. And this was a couple years ago, and I saw them this year. They were without their mom, they were on their own, they were 3 years old. And they're sort of like dogs. They're sort of like big dogs. You can tell when they're about to play, when they're about to get on their hind legs to wrestle with each other. Really, really cute. And they're out there to fish. Again, they don't care about you. They care about salmon. Salmon all day long. Salmon and clams. This is the little guy that was, I think, he was one of the ones that was the clamming brothers. And this past year, he's on his own, and he's one that I was with my guide, and I was with my sister-in-law, and we were shooting. And my guide came up behind me because the bear came up toward the camera. And I was telling Kay, keep shooting, because I'm like shooting all these great pictures while it's approaching. And my guy puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, you stop, and he goes, not you. You stop to the bear. And the bear, you know, just takes a look. He's curious and he walks off. And then the other thing they do in Lake Clark and Powell Bay earlier in the season is they'll eat this sedge grass. So you get these great shots of them in the green. So you can get your water shots, you can get your silhouette shots, you can get your bears sparring, bears clamming, mama bears nursing. It's a bear fiesta. And nothing makes me happier. I just, you know, them letting you be a part of their world, it's sort of indescribable. And I play around a lot with the silhouette shots, morning and evening. When the light's bad, there's not a whole lot you can do. It's not a golden light, really, so you play around with silhouette shots. This was the end of the last trip that I took, the very last few hours that morning, actually. And this mama bear stopped, lay down, and was nursing her 3 cubs right there on the beach. And if you talk about, are the bears comfortable? You know, are we hurting them? Are we scaring them away? If this doesn't show, you know, how comfortably she felt, you know, with her cubs, they've done a very good job protecting these areas and not allowing there to be human-bear conflict. So it's a really special place. These are 2 brothers hanging out. They don't quite know how to fish yet. They're really dirty and lazy. Okay, and then there's mama bear with her cubs in the sedge grass. And again, playing around with some silhouettes at sunrise and sunset. Some black and white. I love the hair, but you can see the fur hanging down from his neck. And again, the mist, misty fog coming through. Bad weather, gotta love it. The other thing you'll find on Lake Clark, and here's my subtle pitch. I have 5 spots left on a trip to Lake Clark for beginner to avid photographers. For next year, August, it's almost the same dates as this one was, August 7th through the 11th, I think. That's what it is, and that's this trip, Lake Clark, and then this Duck Island that I'm about to show you. But it's all inclusive, and basically you're with a small group and you photograph, and it's a very easy trip. It's planes and ATVs, and not a whole lot of walking unless you want to. But you get to pack it all in. The other thing I'll say about that is there's 2 volcanoes that back to this, Iliamna and Mount Redoubt, that are snow-capped behind this. So you get it all. You get the volcanoes, you get the bears, it's crazy. So this is Duck Island. So you go over there for one day as well. You go by an old cannery, and there were like thousands of kittiwakes, which that's not my favorite bird. I don't know much about them, but they were everywhere on the way. And then you land here. We spend the day out on this island, and we have lunch out there. And that's the resident sea otter. It hangs out there. But there are puffins, horned and tufted puffins. There are thousands of them, depending on what time you're there. This last trip, I said it was almost impossible to actually focus on one. Like, pick one that you were going to focus on that was going to jump off the cliffs to track him, to shoot. Because as soon as you were trying to focus and wait, they'd be flying to land on the cliffs, and you'd feel like their webbed feet on your neck as they came by. It was like they were buzzing you from the tower. And then also there was a bald eagle there. So we got to shoot photos of the bald eagle. Now, whenever the bald eagle would show up, all of a sudden you'd be like, where are the puffins? There were hundreds and hundreds of puffins, and then all of a sudden it was quiet, and they were all gone. And then you'd look around, and it'd be the bald eagle just perched right up at the top. There's the other one. Yeah, the orange lichen also makes it really an interesting place to shoot. They're just funny little clown birds. And I have my goals every time I shoot. So I finally did catch some of them flying in the air with the silverfish hanging out of their mouths, but not close enough. I'm not happy yet. Kaktovik, Alaska is kind of an Anwar, and the gates of the Arctic is kind of next